Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today we're going to get into all of my spoiler-free thoughts and feelings on the Daevabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. If you have not already read this series, maybe, it's just been on your TBR for a while and just keeps getting pushed down the TBR, hopefully this video can convince you to bump it up the TBR and finally pick it up because this is amazing. So I wrapped up this trilogy at the end of 2024 with The Empire of Gold, and not only did this book make my top 10 best of the year video in the number 2 spot, this also solidified this trilogy and the short story collection, which we'll get into as well, solidified it as one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, and not like a low number favorite fantasy series. This is very high up on my favorites list, and months later I am still thinking about the end of this book. I'm still thinking about the journey that we've been on with this trilogy, still thinking about these characters, and it just truly is an incredible fantasy series that blends some phenomenal world building, historical and political aspects as well. So we're going to get into all of it, again completely spoiler free, because I do want you to go into this series and just experience the journey for yourself. If you've already read this, I hope you love it as much as I do, and again, like I said, if you haven't read it, I hope you do. And if you have read this series and you found that it wasn't your cup of tea, I want to hear about that too, so don't hesitate to put it in the comments. I always love hearing differing opinions, as long as you keep it respectful, obviously. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you pick up this trilogy. Let's get into it. Get into some background on the Daevabad trilogy. This is a Middle Eastern inspired adult fantasy series. In the series we have The City of Brass, book 1, book 2 is The Kingdom of Copper, and the third and final book is The Empire of Gold. There's also a short story collection, and the stories in the collection take place before, during, and after the events of the series, and Chakraborty even puts a note at the beginning of each story telling you which books in the trilogy the story spoils. But even with that being said, I highly recommend you just read the trilogy first and then go into the short story collection, because it's just a nice little treat to experience after you've already, read through the story. And it feels good to come back to the world after the main adventure is all said and done. In the intro, I mentioned that I love this trilogy so much. It is now one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, and Chakraborty, if I'm being honest, has become one of my new all-time favorite fantasy authors. I did also read The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi when it came out a couple of years ago. Love that as well. It also ended up making my best books of the year video that year. I think she has such a great talent for creating an adventurous story while also creating some really strong historical and political elements to go along with it, while also creating characters that feel so complete, so complex in their motivations, and just who have the most incredible dynamic. My history with this series goes back 5 years ago now. Back in 2020, I read the first book, The City of Brass, and loved it so much, made my favorites list that year. Years ago, I was a lot worse at continuing on with series than I am now. So I read The City of Brass in 2020, loved it, and didn't touch the rest of the trilogy after that. And at that time, I think The Empire of Gold had just come out. But then we fast forward to 2024, and last year I was like, I kind of want to go back to the Daevabad trilogy now. I really miss this world. It's just been sitting on my shelf, like I'm thinking about these characters, but so much time had passed between books 1 and 2 that I felt like I couldn't go into this comfortably without, struggling to remember some of the key plot details, some of the characters. So what I ended up doing was going back and listening to the audiobook version of The City of Brass, which is something that I do pretty often with books that I've already physically read. That's typically how I use audiobooks. Otherwise, I don't listen to audiobooks at all because I'm really terrible at retaining information from audiobooks. And experiencing The City of Brass again and the story coming back to me and just kind of reliving it through that audiobook experience just gave me such a new appreciation for the story and the characters and what Chakraborty was doing with some of the historical and political elements of it. After that, I went right into The Kingdom of Copper, and this was fantastic. Somehow even better than the first book. This is what I look for sequels to be when I go pick up a second book in a series. This was just phenomenal. This is now one of my favorite sequels in a fantasy series, fantasy and or sci-fi series. I would put it up there with God tier sequels like Golden Sun and J War, Wall of Storms, The Tyranny of Faith even. This is just a perfect sequel. There was a lot of heavy lifting that Chakraborty was doing in book 1 to drop us into the world of Daevabad and quickly introduce the characters and the problems and some of the historical tensions. By the time you get to Kingdom of Copper, there really is no room for all of that information to be dumped on us because the story is just so tightly paced. The problem keeps growing and it just is such a perfect sequel. I love this so much. And then to end 2024 and this trilogy, I finished reading The Empire of Gold, and this was just phenomenal. Better than the first 2 books put together. It's a pretty chunky one as well, and it is worth every single page. I just loved it. I just went through a roller coaster of emotions while reading this book. 1 minute you're laughing, 1 minute it feels adventurous, the next minute it's super tense, and then you are crying over characters who are doing, really horrible things. It's excellent. It is excellent. So we're going to talk about all of this, and then we're going to get into River of Silver as well. So what is this trilogy even about? What is going on in this? There's a lot happening over the course of these 3 books. Like I said in the beginning, this is a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy trilogy, and we are following we have a few main characters that we're following, and we get chapters from their own perspectives over the course of the book. This is in 3rd person. But the anchor of this entire series, and kind of who I would consider to be like our main character, is this young woman named Nari. She's a con woman from Cairo, and she has just done everything she can on the streets of Cairo, trying to swindle people out of their money, just trying to survive, trying to get by. And Nari, she's someone who's pretty alone in the world. She has no idea where she comes from, has no family, no friends. And that's exactly how we meet her when we, first pick up the City of Brass. And so to really kick off the story though in the first book, during this ritual that Nari is taking part in, she inadvertently summons this Deva named Dara. And Dara is like, you're not from Cairo. You're not from here. I can take one look at you. I can listen to, the language that you're speaking and know that you do not belong here. And so with that in mind, he whisks her away to the magical city of Daevabad. And the first part of this book, in that journey of them trying to even get to Daevabad, feels so adventurous. It just has, there's something about Chakraborty's writing. It just has this really magical, atmospheric, almost kind of lush writing style to it, where you really feel this adventure that they're on. We're being introduced to all of these like historic, ancient, magical characters along the way on their journey to Daevabad. And just that whole section of the book, as Nari and Dara start to grow a little bit closer to each other, it is just excellent. For this to be a debut, I thought it was just so well done, that first part. And then from there, the story in this begins to take a little bit of a turn when Nari and Dara actually arrive in the city of Daevabad, because it's there where we start to learn more about historical tensions between the tribes of Daevabad. We meet someone who's already on the throne, who comes from a very powerful, very prideful family lineage, and we start seeing how those family ties really relate to a lot of the things historically that have happened over the course of Daevabad. And so that's why I say the story starts to take a little bit of a turn and get more into that heavy world building, heavy politics, because we do start meeting people from the different tribes of Daevabad and how they kind of all relate to each other in their own intertribal politics and historical politics. It's just excellent. And the way that Nari kind of gets wrapped up into all of that, that's why I say she becomes the kind of the anchor of the story, because she gets wrapped up into that, but she's bringing the person who she was in Cairo. She's bringing kind of her worldview into the city of Daevabad, where she doesn't really understand why tensions are the way they are and why characters have to do things a certain way. So you get a lot of that exploration happening over the course of the City of Brass. And I do think in some cases, especially maybe newer readers coming into fantasy, could find that a little bit intimidating in some respects, because you really do just get thrown into the deep end, learning about who these tribes are, learning about the positions and the power that they hold in the city of Daevabad. So that's why I wouldn't like solely place the City of Brass into maybe like a beginner fantasy category if it's something that you're not really used to experiencing, especially in terms of more political fantasy. So that's really the foundation of this first book, and Chakraborty doing all of that heavy lifting to just kind of thrust us into the world of Daevabad. Lately especially, I feel like I've been reading sequels where the second book just balloons completely out of control, and you feel like all of the ideas that the author had that they didn't get to put into the first book get thrown into the second, and the second book just becomes this 0 to 100 kind of situation where you're like, I feel like I'm losing the plot. I feel like I don't know where we're going. Why wasn't this established in book 1? Now I feel like it's being crammed in and we're running out of space and the pacing is off and the plotting is everywhere. That is not the case in the Kingdom of Copper. Because we are getting all of that heavy lifting done in the City of Brass, there is such a natural and just smooth progression into the Kingdom of Copper that just makes it such a great sequel. The pacing is so tight. It flows really well. Don't get me wrong. The story is still expanding in terms of learning more about the like historical background between the families and the tribes and everything. That is still growing. But at the same time, we have a very clear direction that we're moving toward in this second book. And you can definitely feel things building and building and building until they reach just an outright just climax near the end of this book. So that's why I'm putting the Kingdom of Copper in God tier sequel category, because because of all the work that was done in the City of Brass, I feel like this book can just breathe and just flow, and we can just get to where we're going without any unnecessary fluff happening. Also, I love Kingdom of Copper because there's a character that we hear about pretty often throughout the course of the City of Brass, and by the time we get to the Kingdom of Copper, this character has actually made an appearance. And this is, I can't even say who it is because it is a major spoiler, but this is one of my all-time like new favorite characters. I think they are incredible, and they become a real driving force for a lot of the things, especially a lot of the adverse things that are happening in Daevabad throughout Kingdom of Copper and what we see in Empire of Gold. I love them so much. I just think this is one of the most tragic characters that you understand their motivations, but every time they take some kind of ruthless action, it just breaks your heart every single time, because you're like, oh, this is horrible what you're doing, but I get it. Yeah, I love this character, and they really shine in the Kingdom of Copper as the story continues to expand. Then by the time all hell has broken loose at the end of the Kingdom of Copper, we get to the Empire of Gold, and this is just absolute perfection. Like I mentioned, every single page is necessary and worth it. Just an incredible reading experience for a fantasy reader. I loved every second of this. I think I mentioned this briefly in my Best Books of the Year video when I was talking about the Empire of Gold, but it's true for actually the entire series, but especially in this book. I love the conversations in this series. I love the dialogue. I think Chakraborty has such an ear for strong, tense, emotional conversations, but they're not like angsty conversations. Some of them are real, like heartfelt, emotionally mature conversations between these characters. And it's not like, just kind of that quick dialogue where characters are just bouncing things back and forth. Some of these characters are like going on for a while, just talking about what's next and how they've been wronged and why actions are justified and what needs to happen. I'm telling you, they're excellent. The dialogue and the conversations in this book, well, this whole series, but especially in this book, they really get you. And if you have read this series, feel free to agree, disagree with me on this point. But in terms of like character growth over the course of this series, I wouldn't say it's like just heavy on all these characters developing and changing and growing. None of that. It feels a little bit more complex than that, because you are getting characters who are so stuck in their ways, so tied to historical loyalties, family loyalties and affiliations, political, tribal affiliations, that change for them is so difficult, and they are going to try to accomplish their goals on behalf of their affiliations and their family and all of that, regardless of the cost. And so I think that is what is so fascinating, more so than characters just having like these amazing moments of character growth over the course of the series. There is one character in particular that I mentioned, Dara. He is a character who is so burdened by the horrors that he himself has done to other people in the past. And because of that, that's dictating a lot of his actions and the way that he views the current like political situation in Daevabad. But also he is so bound by loyalty as well that your heart just breaks for him when you're reading it. And then you have the character who I, again, can't name, who is just ruthless, because this character has been wronged pretty much their entire life, and they feel like they're owed they feel like they're owed Daevabad for a very good reason. And so you see their actions getting more desperate over the course of the last 2 books. And this character is not receptive to change or hearing people out. They're like, this is what was promised to me. This is mine. This is my family's, and I'm going to take it back no matter the cost. So that's what I love about this series, that you have these characters who are so rooted in their beliefs and their historical ways that they are going to go after what they want no matter the cost. And that's what is so incredible about reading this series, is that you truly understand their motivations for every single thing that they do, say, think over the course of all these 3 books. I love it. This is a phenomenal fantasy series. I don't know like precisely where I would rank it in my top 5. I have to like really sit down and think about my top 5, top like 10 favorite fantasy series, but this is definitely a top 5 series. The more I think about it, the more it just like creeps up my all-time favorites list. I could go on and on about the Daevabad trilogy, you guys. This is well worth the read. And again, Chakraborty is, I think, a really talented author who can blend great characters and world building and politics and just a sense of adventure and magic, and just, you know, take all of that and combine it into a really unforgettable fantasy series. I think it's just perfect. And then again, River of Silver, this is, I think, a must read as well once you finish this series. You get some stories in here that take place before the City of Brass. You get stories that take place after the Kingdom of Copper. You get stories that take place after Empire of Gold. It's just so good. It's so good. And I think it's the perfect thing to get to when you finish Empire of Gold and you just want more. And I'm telling you, opening up that first story in this collection was just amazing. So I loved it. I love this entire trilogy. Again, one of my all-time favorites, you guys. So I hope, you know, you love this as much as I do if you have read it. If you haven't read it, I hope this has inspired you to give it a try. Just easily a top-tier fantasy series. So highly recommended. It's perfect. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts. If you read it, if you haven't read it, or if you have read it and you're just like, no, I don't like this series. But I really do hope that you all, if you have read it, that you do love it. And if you haven't, that you end up picking it up. So yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, take care.